Welcome to Partnering with Nature, a Biophilic Cities webinar series. I'm Rebecca Fornaby, a research associate with the Biophilic Cities project at the University of Virginia. Through this series, we hear from practitioners and researchers who are designing resilient and adaptive urban nature, engaging the public to protect and enhance their blue and green infrastructure, and addressing environmental justice issues through research and on-the-ground projects. The Biophilic Cities project started at UVA in 2011 to explore and advance nature in cities. In the fall of 2013, the Global Biophilic Cities Network was launched, with partner cities spanning the globe from Phoenix, Arizona to Singapore to Wellington, New Zealand. The webinar series is one of many ways in which the new Global Biophilic Cities Network will help to disseminate knowledge about the innovative work of cities, organizations, and individuals around the world. To learn more about the project, visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and at biophilic-cities.org. Today we'll be hearing from Catherine Werner. In 2009, Catherine was appointed as the first Sustainability Director for the City of St. Louis. She works in the Office of the Mayor as the champion of triple bottom line sustainability practices, balancing social, economic, and environmental issues. Catherine spearheaded and oversees several successful sustainability programs, including the City of St. Louis Urban Vitality and Ecology Initiative and Milkweeds for Monarchs, the St. Louis Butterfly Project. Under Catherine's leadership and direction, the City of St. Louis has demonstrated innovative urban monarch conservation practices at the local level while serving as a leader at the regional and national scale. Catherine has partnered with numerous national organizations and federal agencies on a variety of monarch efforts and received Monarch grant awards from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Catherine is a lead accredited professional, obtained her JD from Washington University School of Law and her undergraduate degree from Duke University. Catherine will speak now for about 30-40 minutes and then answer a few questions about her work. So welcome, Catherine.
Great. Thanks so much, Rebecca. This is a great opportunity. I'm looking forward to sharing how the City of St. Louis has implemented urban monarch conservation strategies to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes for butterflies and people both. Well, let me start with this springtime photo showing some of the many plants and sculptures in the beautiful, in the beautiful city garden located in downtown St. Louis. In the background, you can see the Gateway Arch, the tallest national monument in the country, and the historic old courthouse where the Dred Scott case was handled. A typical urban setting of natural and man-made infrastructure. So I want to begin by pointing out what I consider to be the urban difference in monarch conservation programs. I think the most significant difference is people. In general, there is a much greater density and diversity of people in the urban core. I think this presents a terrific opportunity. And today, I'm going to outline some of the ways that St. Louis has oriented its urban monarch conservation programs towards reaching and helping people, just as it has designed them to reach and help monarch butterflies. First, a reality check. I think it important to establish the context for urban conservation programs. The reality for cities and the people who live there are many challenges, sometimes considerable challenges. Here you see a photo of one of the dilapidated structures in Old North St. Louis. Resulting after decades of disinvestment, vacancy of land and buildings is something that plagues St. Louis City. The small map shows in pink and orange approximately 20,000 vacant properties. The city faces other challenges relating to racial tensions, school quality, and economic disparities. True, we have many challenges, but all is not doom and gloom in St. Louis. There are many signs of growth and prosperity, many innovations, achievements, and assets too. And the half-full perspective of urban challenges is that they oftentimes present some wonderful opportunities. In fact, we have found that an urban monarch conservation program is full of possibility and can bring hope and change to the urban landscape. Let me briefly outline what I consider to be the urban habitat opportunity. If we were to consider a Venn diagram, I'd like to focus on the intersecting area. I will call it the urban habitat opportunity. First, consider a monarch butterfly's habitat. We know that monarchs are dependent on milkweed, as it is the host plant for monarch butterflies. Milkweed is the only plant on which a female monarch will lay her egg, and the only plant that monarch caterpillars will eat. After the caterpillars have become butterflies, monarchs need nectar sources for energy, especially during their long migration. While many plants can serve as nectar sources, some of the best nectar sources are native plants. So, you might find a monarch butterfly enjoying a small patch of native plants, like in this photo. Now consider habitat needed for people. Typically, we associate a home or a dwelling as a person's habitat. Of course, most people don't remain in their house 24/7, 365. And monarchs don't remain in a particular butterfly garden 24/7, 365. Some people get their hands dirty within a pollinator garden, and many others will venture outside their house and experience the perimeter of a garden area, maybe on the way to school or work or activities. Of course, monarchs split from area to area, sometimes over great expanses, to get to their next destination. This intersection holds incredible promise. Because the reality is, most people and creatures exist outside of prescribed boundaries. So here's what I consider to be a potential win-win. The urban habitat opportunity for monarchs and people, both. Now, I raised the question at the beginning about what is the urban difference, because I think that context and perspective are really important. Let's start with the monarch's perspective. Here's a slide showing some prairie plants in the city of St. Louis. If you look at the map of the state of Missouri in the upper left corner, you will notice a lot of orange. This is the area that was historically believed to be covered with tallgrass prairie. The white circle is the area where St. Louis is today. On the bottom right is a map of the North American monarch migration. Yellow areas indicating spring journey north, and red arrows indicating the fall migration south. Again, within the white circle is approximately where St. Louis is. You can see that the monarch migration includes St. Louis, and one of the likely reasons is because so much of the area contained tallgrass prairie species, such as milkweed. Fast forward a couple hundred years, today you won't find much prairie left in either St. Louis or the state of Missouri. In fact, more than 99% of tallgrass prairies are gone now. What a monarch might see as it flies over St. Louis today is something like this, one of our 108 urban parks. This one happens to have a large monarch garden area in it. But notice what else the city has, about 315,000 people. Shown here are some of the volunteers from the community who put in the park's monarch garden areas. So, while people work to help create monarch habitat, I know that the monarch habitat is serving to help those people too. One more point about perspective. In these three photos, we see what a monarch might. A monarch's view of a classroom activity, milkweed plants in an urban garden, or a tagging exercise. So one variation on perspective is what a monarch sees or needs, or what a monarch can get from an urban environment. Another variation on perspective is how people experience monarchs, their habitat, and magnificent migration. In other words, what monarchs can give to people in the urban core. By honoring and keeping both perspectives in mind, An urban Monarch program can be designed to provide valuable and beneficial outcomes to monarchs and people alike. So that's what we attempted to do in St. Louis, create a program that would be mutually beneficial to monarchs and people. Because we know that nature needs people. Things like providing monarch gardens in their habitat, performing stewardship activities, conducting research and citizen science. And we know that people need nature. There are numerous studies demonstrating a variety of quality of life improvements that are associated with connecting with nature, including better health and well-being, educational performance, community engagement, and economic benefits. For these reasons, the City of St. Louis incorporated numerous strategies in its sustainability plan, adopted in 2013 by the city's Planning Commission. At the time of adoption, Mayor Francis Slate established his administration's priorities for implementation of the sustainability plan. The Mayor's Sustainability Action Agenda priorities set out specific targets to reach and a time frame for achieving them. Among the 29 action items was a commitment to double the current eco-literacy rate by launching a program to foster an enhanced connection between people and urban natural resources. Before we set about trying to double the eco-literacy rate, we figured we needed to establish what the current eco-literacy rate was. I worked with education experts at the Missouri Botanical Garden to develop an eco-literacy survey that the city could disseminate through its neighborhood specialists. It's a one-page survey that was designed to be completed on paper or online in a couple of minutes. By the way, just let me know if anyone would like to see our eco-literacy survey, and I'd be happy to email it to you. We had a good response rate that spanned all parts of the city. The information we gathered in 2014 established our eco-literacy baseline for benchmarking purposes. One of the most interesting findings was that 87% of the people responding felt it was important to live near quality outdoor green spaces. We asked a related question about people's priorities. The responses told us that the #1 reason people are concerned about ecology and environmental issues is because of the impact on my health and well-being. A close second was on future generations. So a very people-centric response to why green space matters to them. To make good on the second part of this Sustainability Action Agenda priority, we launched a program to foster the connection between people and urban natural resources. In 2013, the Mayor's Office partnered with the Missouri Department of Conservation and Missouri Botanical Garden to launch the City of St. Louis Urban Vitality and Ecology Initiative. Since then, we have brought on dozens of stakeholders that share an interest in urban conservation and connecting people with nature, where they live, where they work, learn, play, and pray. And we are working together to foster those connections throughout the city. To try and communicate our recommendation to connect with nature on a frequent basis, we drew inspiration from the nature pyramid concept developed at the University of Virginia and tailored it for St. Louis. We encourage people to connect with nature as much as possible, hopefully on a daily and weekly basis. There are 3 general approaches we are pursuing for St. Louis in this regard. 1, create more green space. 2, enhance urban areas to provide higher quality, biologically diverse green space. And 3, make it easier for people to access that green space. Of course, it's often easier said than done, and these things can require a heavy lift of resources and a long-term investment of effort. Without a budget and anxious to make a tangible difference in the short term, I was struggling to think through how to have an immediate impact. Right about that time, I took a vacation to Singapore. I had heard wonderful things about Singapore at the launch of the Biophilic Cities Network and was inspired to check out this city as a garden. It seemed to me that green was everywhere in Singapore and that biodiversity is a priority. I sensed there was a particular emphasis on green space corridors and connections, and educating about butterflies. As I was leaving Singapore, I had the good fortune to stumble on the 2-story butterfly conservatory that is located in the Singapore airport. In the midst of the hustle and bustle of a major international airport, people of all ages were taking a few minutes to enjoy the butterflies there. The joy they were experiencing is evident in the expression on their faces. What an incredible opportunity, I thought, to be able to experience this moment of delight and transform a potentially mundane or even stressful travel experience into something so wonderful. I wondered, how could we introduce something like this? Easy access to nature, simple interaction with something appreciated and beautiful, something that would bring a smile to almost anyone's face, something inspirational, something quick, something affordable. About the same time, some significant reports came out establishing the precipitous decline in the monarch butterfly population. Their overwintering numbers in the pine forests of Mexico had plummeted to an all-time low. So in a moment of serendipity, I proposed to the mayor a monarch gardening concept to create monarch habitat throughout the urban core. Mayor Slay was enthusiastic about the idea and gave his full support in moving ahead. We wanted to establish a strong foundation, so reached out to local partners with special knowledge of plants and butterflies to make sure we had the requisite expertise. We got much more than we bargained for in that regard, as the entire project has been a fantastic collaboration of many stakeholders from the very beginning, and it is all the richer for the layered participation. On Earth Day 2014, Mayor Slay launched Milkweeds for Monarchs, the St. Louis Butterfly Project, with a demonstration, a commitment, and a challenge. I think having the mayor as a champion of Milkweeds for Monarchs was a key ingredient to our recipe for success. I like to say we have a mayor for Monarchs. Mayor Slay is not only supportive, but has been an engaged and active participant in the program. The photos you see in the left side are ones he took at the monarch garden he put in at his personal residence. So he walked the talk. He also led by example and committed the city to creating 50 small monarch gardens and challenged people in the community to create another 200 for a goal of 250 new monarch gardens to match the 250th anniversary of the city of St. Louis. The experts told us that an area as small as 1 square meter with the right combination of plants would be enough to serve as habitat for monarchs. Since 1 square meter seemed very doable, our initial focus was on small-scale monarch gardens at homes and neighborhood spaces. We wanted the 50 monarch gardens created by the city to be in the public realm so that people could easily access and enjoy them. I found resources to get the plants, and the City Parks Department installed most of these initial 50 gardens at firehouses, city buildings, police stations, and city parks. In order to make it easy for people to take on the challenge, the city worked with its partners to develop resources, tools, and reference materials. We also reached out to garden centers to encourage them to carry a specific combination of milkweed and nectar sources, what our experts determined were the best for success in our area for monarch gardening. Providing people with this sort of information takes the guesswork out of creating monarch gardens and turns it into something that just about anyone can do. We let people know what to plant, where to get the plants, how to do the planting, and how to take care of the plants. We even created a one-stop shopping opportunity for people. We set up a day and time for people to come to a convenient location and purchase a monarch garden in a box, helping those who had limited transportation options and saving people the time of running around town who might be trying to find a certain plant species. We added a signage component for a couple of different purposes. Again, with the help of our partners, the St. Louis Zoo in particular, we developed interpretive panels to place at some of our more prominent monarch garden areas, such as the City Hall and Forest Park Gardens shown here. We wanted to try and use the panels to educate about the monarch migration and the role that people could play in monarch conservation. We also created small yard signs for people to place in their home gardens. We used those signs as incentives, offering them to people who registered information about their new monarch garden on the city's website. Since we had a goal of creating 250 new monarch gardens, this was our way to track participation, as well as to help raise awareness. Once you would register your new monarch garden, a monarch butterfly icon would appear on the online map, and you would be eligible for one of these yard signs. In a little bit, I'll show you the map of the monarch gardens that have been registered so far. The Milkweeds for Monarchs garden program took off really like wildfire. It was so popular the first spring we launched the program that there was literally a run on milkweed plants in the region. But we saw this as a good problem to have and made sure to build in a greater supply of tools and resources and plants for down the road. We found additional supporters and resources, enabling the city to expand the program from a small residential scale to larger community gardens. Now, we were tapping into the power of not just the individual, but of groups of individuals, and impacting not just one gardener, but a classroom of students or a number of individuals in a neighborhood beautification group. Again, it is a win-win result of many people helping monarchs and monarchs helping many people. In a very short amount of time, Milkweeds for Monarchs grew from a residential monarch gardening program to a landscape-scale urban monarch conservation program. We were again fortunate to find additional partnerships and resources, such as through the Scotts Miracle-Gro and National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, to expand our program even further. All along the way, we have tried to emphasize connecting people with nature and giving them the opportunity to learn about monarch conservation and stewardship. From Boy Scouts to Master Gardeners to neighborhood association members, our monarch program has both depended upon and thrived on the people who agreed to participate. And I will talk about some of the social impact we have found along the way. But first, let me take a moment to mention the impact we think this kind of effort can have on the monarch population. There was a study published in 2015 by Doug Talney, the renowned author. The study looked at residential gardens to try and determine whether they were serving a purpose that was relevant to monarchs and their population. The findings showed that even small monarch gardens in residential areas were successful and productive monarch habitat areas. In fact, monarchs were laying eggs there in significant numbers. So we know that even a single residential monarch garden can be beneficial to a monarch butterfly. Now, take a look at the photos shown here. These were all sent to me by a City of St. Louis resident who took the photos at her home garden. The whole monarch life cycle was captured there. And I don't know how to measure the sense of pride or happiness she must have felt in witnessing and capturing these various images at her very own home. But it is clear to me that these residential monarch gardens are having an impact on people as well as monarchs. So, here's an example of one monarch residential garden in the city of St. Louis. Now take a look at the shape of the city outlined on the map to the right in red. And here is the map showing the monarch gardens that have been registered since the mayor launched the program a bit over 2.5 years ago. We have 356 monarch gardens as of today, and these are just the ones people registered. I know there are many more that have been created but not registered. So we not only reached our goal of creating 250 new monarch gardens, but greatly exceeded the goal. Now that's a good amount of monarch habitat and a good amount of people connecting to that habitat. Win-win. As the final portion of my presentation, I want to delve into a few specifics about one of our urban monarch conservation programs. In June 2015, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service awarded the City of St. Louis a grant to conduct research, education, and outreach. On the left is a map showing the location of 30 urban monarch gardens and 7 urban prairie patches that were evaluated by the research team. The research consisted of 3 parts. The Missouri Botanical Garden looked at floristic diversity. The St. Louis Zoo looked at pollinator abundance. And the University of Missouri at St. Louis, or UMSL, looked at social impact and eco-literacy. UMSL divided their social impact research into 2 phases. The first was a rapid-fire assessment of all 37 monarch habitat sites. And the second was an in-depth ethnographic look at 5 of the research sites. Their rapid-fire survey responses provided some interesting and helpful insights. The researchers looked at things like who was visiting, which gardens, how often, and what kind of visitor experience they tended to have at the sites. One question that the researchers asked was, is aesthetic beauty a benefit of the site? Of the 141 people who answered this question, 85% did associate aesthetic beauty with the monarch garden site. But what about the 15% that did not respond affirmatively to that question? Why didn't they associate aesthetic beauty with the site? I've listed some of their replies in italics here, as I find it instructive to pay attention to their specific responses. If I were to summarize these remarks, it would be, these folks had a preference for well-kept gardens and habitat areas. In other words, they would think there would be a need for thoughtful design, stewardship activities, and adequate maintenance. We learned that things like signs and having trash cans nearby also proved beneficial. Of course, there are lots of ways to try and reach people and encourage them to connect with nature. We are fortunate to have several fantastic local partners doing monarch outreach in a variety of ways, from holding activities and workshops, building demonstration garden areas. We have Brightside St. Louis has a Neighbors Naturescaping small grant program, and interactive displays and exhibits at places like the St. Louis Zoo and Missouri Botanical Garden that reach thousands of people. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant allowed us to conduct targeted community outreach and education. We focused on neighborhood improvement specialists within the city and on urban schools. We had already seen some interest in school monarch gardening in the early phase of our program. We wondered what would happen if we really targeted schools for this purpose. We wanted to intentionally build capacity in schools and in their surrounding school communities. Why? Well, children are our future. If we cultivate stewards of the earth at a young age, we can help foster respect for nature and even create heroes of the planet. And as another win-win outcome, school monarch programs can provide many educational benefits and enrichment opportunities for youth of all ages. Educators at the Missouri Botanical Garden and St. Louis Zoo led this part of the city's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant work. During the grant period, the education team partnered with a variety of school types, student ages, and school locations in the city. We held a full-day monarch workshop for educators and neighborhood specialists. We installed 50 monarch gardens at schools across the city. And we are putting the finishing touches on an educator guide meant to help urban schools find the path of least resistance in creating school monarch gardens with and for students. The school effort has been one of the most exciting and personally gratifying aspects of the St. Louis Urban Monarch program. But it's more than monarchs that are benefiting. It's the worm, the snail, and the flower that were shown to me when these girls participated in a school monarch gardening project. Actually, it's more than the butterfly, the worm, the snail, and the flower. It's the students, the kids, children, the youth who connect with the habitat, flora, and fauna. So, in addition to what people can do for monarchs, it's what monarchs can give to people, lots of people. Let me conclude by sharing a few tips and suggested considerations for those contemplating an urban monarch program that is as focused on people as it is on the butterflies. Consider your objectives at the outset and your capacity from the very beginning. I would encourage having a clear focal point and starting small in the first instance. You can always build and grow. There are many sources of support available, from organizations with expertise to volunteer groups offering valuable time and sweat equity, to funders and those who can provide low or no-cost tools, plants, and supplies. Be open to creative partnerships and be prepared to share the limelight. I think it's a good idea to lead by example and try to walk that talk. This earns respect, builds confidence. It is also a good way to experience issues and obstacles firsthand. There are plenty of opportunities to learn and grow from unanticipated outcomes or miscalculations, and that's okay too. Make it as simple, inexpensive, and user-friendly as possible. Don't forget common sense. Perhaps consider that there are people outside your community who are experiencing the splendor of monarchs too. Other cities, other regions, other states, and even other countries. The monarch is having an impact on people across North America, from Canada, across the US to Mexico. We can collaborate and communicate with others to learn from them, to appreciate their perspective, and to hear their stories, making the experience all the more meaningful. Most of all, don't forget to have fun. Take time to celebrate and delight the monarch butterfly. Want to experience a metamorphosis? Simply take a shy or tired child of just about any age or background, put a pair of monarch butterfly wings on him or her, watch the smile spread ear to ear, and witness an instant transformation. Thank you.
Wow, great. Okay. First of all, just thank you, Catherine, for telling us about this pretty incredible project. It sounds like you had a lot of success with the St. Louis program. Is there anything that you would do differently given the chance?
Well, sure. You always want to take a chance to reflect and improve, and it's a great question. If I had the chance, I would spend a lot more time on the front end trying to anticipate and build capacity, especially with respect to stewardship and maintenance needs. Frankly, it's relatively easy to find the time and resources to create a monarch garden. It's exciting, it's almost instant gratification, but ensuring its long-term care, that's a much more difficult proposition. And we have found it really helps to have the monarch habitat stewards, or at least the folks that you hope who will serve as stewards, participate in creating the garden at the outset. Remember those firehouses and police stations I mentioned, and how the City Parks Department put those in as our commitment of the first city 50 gardens? Right. Well, those gardens, unfortunately, are some of the most troubled and least successful that we've seen. Some are doing fine, but others are just not thriving. And we think it is because they were put in at the firehouses for them and not with the firefighters or the folks who are there at the police stations and so forth. And to build that capacity and sense of connection so that they'd be interested and willing to care for those garden areas over time. And in comparison, we're seeing a much better outcome of monarch gardens installed by active community groups or schools with an ongoing relationship with the garden. So building that connection and relationship from the get-go, I think, is really important. And finding ways in your program design to anticipate that maintenance piece and that need from the very beginning is, I think that would be one thing that I would do a little bit differently.
Great. This question kind of goes along the same, you were just ready to touch on this, I think, but what would you say is the most important piece for generating a monarch conservation program with social impact?
Well, I think the very first thing is to ask yourself, is this something that's a priority for you in your program? Because not everybody, the social component is not a priority for everyone, and that's going to really influence how you approach things. That said, even while every community is a little bit different, I think there are a lot of commonalities across the board. And to have those social impacts, I guess what I'd say is essential is to take affirmative steps, again, at the beginning and all along the way, to honor, respect, and value perspective, all of those perspectives. That what you're doing is as much about benefiting people as it is helping the butterflies, a dual objective and approach. And if you focus your efforts solely on helping the monarch, that's great for the monarch, but chances are your impact on people will be limited or tangential. But if helping people is always at the core of your program design, delivery, and decisions, I think you can end up with that win-win outcome of helping monarchs and people both. But I do think it's best to do that in a very intentional and balanced way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you. You referenced a few tools and materials that St. Louis developed. Are these available to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, here's my contact information as well as the city's website. If you can't remember this, you can simply Google City of St. Louis and Monarchs, and a whole bunch of monarch information will come up. But many of the tools, the sheets that I showed, and even fun things like a monarch origami and things, these can be found for downloading online. And actually, at one point for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I put together a flash drive of urban monarch conservation materials that has even more, like how to create a monarch seed packet and the interpretive panels and those yard signs that I showed. And so if anyone would like, I have a few of those flash drives left, and if anyone would like me to send one of those, I'd be happy to do so. Just shoot me an email.
Fantastic. And one last question for you. Are the findings of that Urban Monarch grant research available for anyone who might want to take a closer look?
Yes, yeah, no, that's great. We're really excited about this research, and the grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is in its 11th hour. It's wrapping up this month, and the final report will be available after the first of the year. We have a kind of a mid-course preliminary report that can be found online for some aspects of the research, but the final findings and the whole report will be available in just a month or so.
Great. We look forward to that. That concludes this Biophilic Cities webinar, Leveraging Urban Monarch Programs for Social Impact. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you again for sharing your work with us, Catherine.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.